Hi everyone, this is Dr. Susan Brown again from the Center for Better Bones. I'm really happy to be with you all here today. And in fact, as you might have noticed, every Thursday I'm going to try to spend a few minutes with you so we can look over the materials in the blog, answer any questions you have about the blog, the topic we discussed that particular week in the Better Bones blog, and then also to answer any questions you have. And there's actually a few questions from last week. I'm going to try to answer those if we get a chance. But first I want to talk to you about this week's blog, which is that whole interesting question of how do I know if I'm losing calcium from my body? Am I losing calcium particularly from my urine? Now this blog we wrote because it's really important to understand, we know calcium's important, but are we keeping it in the body? And what we find through our research on bone health is that 20%, and in some studies 40% of all women who are found to have osteoporosis are actually losing calcium in the urine. And when you can correct that loss of calcium, you really help to stabilize bone. So let's go into a little detail about this. The question of the recycling of calcium in the body is really fascinating. The body is a great recycling plant, probably one of the best recycling plants that there ever existed. We take in calcium, we take in iron, we take in minerals, and we recycle those minerals. However, when we look at calcium, there's calcium in the blood, and that's where it's active as many things, as a messenger to regulate heartbeat. It affects the nerves. Calcium has many important roles in the blood. And of course, calcium is put in the bone for another reason. It is stored in bone. It gives strength to bone in a certain sense. And it's stored so it can be drawn back into the blood when we need it in the blood. And so, it's very important to have a precise level of blood calcium. The kidneys are always filtering the blood, and their job is the great recycler. So they purify the blood, and they put all the good stuff back in the blood and all the bad stuff, so to speak, in the urine. Now what can happen with the calcium, as the body's filtering the blood all day long, as the kidneys filter all day long, they can filter several thousand milligrams of calcium. Most of it is put right back into the blood, set to use again, everything is fine. However, a small amount of it is lost in the kidneys. And this can be because the kidneys are actually a little bit ineffective and they're not recycling at all, or it can be because we're doing things like taking too much salt, or actually under a lot of stress, or certain drugs and medications that cause us to lose calcium in the urine. The first thing we're going to talk about is just knowing that this can happen and knowing that this can contribute to osteoporosis. As a matter of fact, in Spain they looked at this. They took women and men with osteopenia and with osteoporosis, and they found that those with osteoporosis were losing much more calcium in the urine. And in their studies, 40% of all the people with osteoporosis were losing calcium in the urine. You might know that here at the Center for Better Bones, it's our belief that every single case of excessive bone loss has a cause. And so one of these causes that doctors don't pay enough attention to is a loss of calcium in the urine. And that's why we're writing about this. So it's an important thing. It can be very associated with bone weakening. So what we simply suggest is that everyone, if your doctor suggests you have excessive bone loss, or if they suggest, you should really consider a bone drug therapy, which to our mind says there must be excessive loss, the doctor must be concerned, then it's good to suggest to ask for a test for the loss of calcium in the urine. It's a simple test. They send you home with a big jug. You collect urine all day, all night, and then they analyze that. What you can simply know is 250 milligrams loss of calcium is considered normal. Some labs even consider 300. But if it's over that, you should definitely talk to your physician and seek a program for that. Let me just tell you that some of the simple things that you can do, if your test comes back high, it's definitely a time to talk with your doctors. There's several reasons. It can be as simple as the fact that you were using too much calcium supplementation. And in fact, the best way to do this test, the best way to test for a loss of calcium in the urine is to take the test when you're not using calcium supplements. We tell clients to be off calcium supplements even for 2 weeks before the test. Because if you're taking 1,500 milligrams of calcium, which people used to do in the old days, but is certainly not recommended now, then you might have too much in the body, so the body just excretes it in the urine. So you always want to make sure that you weren't taking too much calcium when you got the test. Other reasons for a high loss of calcium in urine can involve too much vitamin D. If you take too much vitamin D, which is again very rare, but you can absorb too much calcium. There's also people that just are hyperabsorbers of calcium. They absorb too much. Again, this is very rare, but you can check for it. More common is a parathyroid situation, that the parathyroid is overactive, it's breaking down too much bone, you get too much blood calcium, and then you get too much calcium in the urine because the body's trying to excrete it. The long and the short of it is loss of calcium in the urine can be a complicated issue or it can be a simple issue. But the first step is to just test for it, to make sure that if you're a person with osteoporosis or you're a person that the doctor says you have excessive bone loss, we like to test for all the possible hidden causes. And a loss of calcium in the urine is one of those. Then when you find out if it really is a problem, then you can work with your physicians to find the right solution. And we certainly have lots of information on natural solutions here at the Center for Better Bones. For example, the first thing you'll be told is to reduce salt in your diet, because that's an important thing, to reduce alcohol, to reduce stress, because if you have a fight with your partner, you're going to increase more loss of calcium in the urine. To alkalize. In fact, in the world of naturopathic medicine, they correct or they treat a high calcium in the urine by alkalizing. And of course, those of you who follow my work know we really propose a very elegant alkaline diet, which we call the Alkaline for Life diet, and we actually have a whole website on that at alkalineforlife.com. So think about it, just one of the many hidden causes of bone loss. We have a whole document on the medical hidden causes of osteoporosis. You can find that on our website if you look up medical tests for the causes of osteoporosis. And I actually have a whole DVD on that. If you go to our shop, you can see detecting the hidden causes of bone loss. So I hope this has been helpful, and I hope you can share this information with your friends, encourage others to take charge of their bone health, because I can tell you truly, no one cares about your bone health or your own health, your total health, as much as you do. Let's take a minute and look at the questions we have. We'll first look at the questions that might relate to this kind of technical issue of a loss of calcium in the urine, and then I'll try to answer some of the questions that came up from last week's Facebook live chat. Let's see what we have here. I think I'm otherwise healthy. I don't have any parathyroid problem. How much calcium should I be taking for my bones? You know, that's a really good question. Lydia asked that question. It's a really good question. I always start answering that question by saying, remember, Lydia, it's more than just calcium. We have long championed the fact there's at least 20 key nutrients that are essential for bone health. Taking calcium by itself is not going to be helpful. There's been hundreds of studies on that. It's not helpful unless your whole diet is very, very low in calcium, say under 500 milligrams. What's important is to do a full array of nutrients. The calcium we recommend is the standard guideline that's now given by the government, 1,200 milligrams between diet and supplements together. In that case, we really just usually supplement, say, with 500 or 600 milligrams of supplemental calcium, always in an alkalizing form, and then we like to get the rest from diet. It's very important, though, to get equal amounts of that of magnesium, at least in supplement form, to get the zinc, copper, manganese, all the vitamins. So remember, Lydia, we propose moderate calcium, but actually the full array of the 20 key bone building nutrients. And if you do this 24-hour urine calcium test, be sure to go off your calcium for a couple weeks before you take this test. Let's see if there's any other questions that relate to this loss of calcium in the urine. Okie doke. Yeah, there's a question about how concerned should I be. Important thing is just to get the test. Don't worry about what you're going to do with the test results right away. Just get the results, and then you'll find lots of natural remedies, dietary changes that can be helpful. But essentially, this is an issue that your physician or your endocrinologist will help you with. One of these issues that can be a hidden cause of bone loss. Certain things you can do yourself about it, certain things you're going to need medical help with. Another listener wants to know, I take CalMag, is that a good source for calcium? Well, I would say that question I like more, because we always want to take calcium in conjunction with magnesium. And in the Better Bones, Better Body program, we suggest as much calcium as magnesium. Some other individuals may say half as much magnesium. Magnesium, we're going to find out, I believe, is as important for bone health as calcium. It's been well understudied. There's some new research now showing the bone building effects of magnesium. Magnesium as important as calcium, I believe. And an interesting caveat there, if you say, gee, I've heard magnesium is good, but I get a loose stool from magnesium, that takes us into a whole other realm, and that realm is the fact that many people have a block to magnesium uptake in the intestine, and they actually get loose stool, and that can be corrected. And I have worked with some major researchers on ways to correct that block to magnesium uptake. So you may contact the Center for Better Bones. I actually produced a little video on that for my clients. If you say, gee, I know magnesium's good for me, but I'm getting loose stool, that's a whole other problem, and you want to be able to correct that block to magnesium uptake. Let's see what else we have here. I was told I have osteoporosis based on the DEXA, which is the bone density scan, and all other tests are normal. So that's great, but remember, make sure you had all those tests, you know, parathyroid, the loss of calcium in the urine, the vitamin D, the C-reactive protein. Look at our list of medical tests, because you want to make sure that they're all covered, but that's a good sign that you were tested. I don't want to take medications. What supplements can I take to build bone density? Perfect. So first, you know, there's no medical cause, and you might check our medical osteoporosis workup or look at my DVD on the topic to make sure everything's been covered. Then you'd say, great, so then it's up to me. I know I need to exercise, I know I need to alkalize, I know I need to work with my stress level, balance my hormones, particularly reducing stress, and I know that I should use the nutrients. Actually, I have developed a very careful program with the 20 Key Bone Nutrients Plus, and some of you might have heard about the Better Bones Builder product. It's actually a product that you can find available on my site, betterbones.com. That product is the most comprehensive bone building product on the market. It combines a multivitamin with all the key bone nutrients in appropriate doses. It's a very comprehensive formula. You have to use 8 tablets a day, and that just goes to show you that there's a wide array of nutrients in all the proper doses. And that Better Bones Builder was actually meant to alkalize. So if you're measuring your first morning urine, you're going to see that that product will alkalize and put you in a good position. You can also look at the ingredients in that product and see if you want to duplicate them someplace else, but it is the best, in my mind, and I spent many years doing this, the best over-the-counter formula you can get with all the nutrients that are important to bone health in alkalizing forms. The Better Bones Builder, our own Better Bones product. Let's see what else we have here. Let's see if there's anything else we want to answer, particularly about the loss of calcium in the urine. It seems like there's not too many questions on that right now. If you happen to watch this video at another time and say, you know, I have some questions about the loss of calcium in the urine or how to measure that or what it means, just write us a little note on Facebook, and one of the following weeks we'll answer that question. Like, if we don't have any more questions right now with this, I'm going to answer some of the questions that came in last week. After we did our Facebook Live, which we try to do on Thursdays at 12:30 Eastern Time, some other questions came in, and let me answer those for you right now. And some of these were really pretty interesting. One person writes in that what does it mean when an orthopedic doctor says that you have soft bones? In this case, the doctor conducted a surgery with the bones, like often when they insert screws to the bone or do other things to the bone, and they say the bone is soft. Well, that really is a pretty good indicator that there's some weakness in the bone structure. Just like if you screw a screw into a soft wood, it can pull out easier and it's weaker wood as opposed to a nice hard wood where it's hard to get that screw in. The doctors are able to notice the strength of the bone when they work with the bone, when they cut through it, put screws in it, whatever they're going to do. So if you were told you have a soft bone by an orthopedic doctor, you should definitely do a bone strengthening program. All those very nutrients we talked about, the Better Bones Builder, for example, a good alkaline diet, exercise that makes the bones show we need them with the tendons and the muscles pulling on bone. The complete Better Bones program would be a very good idea if you were told by a doctor that you had soft bones. The next question was, again, interesting. This listener writes, my score for the right hip went from a -3.4 to a -4.9 in 2 years. Now that is quite a dramatic change in 2 years. And when you talk about a 4.9 T-score, remember, T-score compares you to young people. That means that very few young people 30 years old, have a bone density that low. Now, of course, I don't know the age of the person who wrote this, and I don't really know their condition or their situation, but let me tell you, for everyone's interest, if you had a -5 T-score, that means 1 in a million. That's 1 in a million people 30 years old have that bone density. So to go from a -3.9 to a -3.4 to a -4.9 in 2 years is a big loss. We know the machines aren't precise. We know there could be inaccuracies there, but I would definitely, if it were me, I'd take that as a tip-off that I really need to find out what's behind this bone loss. What is the cause of this excessive bone loss over a 2-year period? This writer goes on to say, my doctor says I have no choice but to take meds now. And then she goes on to say, from what I've read, the medication risks still seem greater than the osteoporosis. And she goes on to talk to her doctor about that. So here I would say, obviously, at the Center for Better Bones, our work is to help people understand bone health, become advocates for themselves, and see how they can naturally maximize bone health. There are situations, however, where the bone loss cannot be comprehended, that cannot be figuring out why they have excessive bone loss, and the bone loss continues, and even fractures may occur, or the fractures continue. And so certainly in those situations, there's a role for bone drugs. In this particular person who wrote to say, gee, I lost a lot of bone over the last couple years, what we'd of course suggest is you go back to some doctors who really know about bone health, and hopefully maybe even functional medicine doctors who are now trained to look for the causes of the problem, to go back and see what the cause is of all this excessive bone loss. We know, for example, during menopause, the average woman loses 10% of her bone mass in those first few years before the last period to the first 5 years after. I see many women, particularly thin women, that lose 20%. It could be that this woman who wrote about this excessive bone loss, this was occurring during menopause, but still those numbers are too low, and there was too much loss in a short period of time. So you want to get a complete medical workup. These are often done by endocrinologists. We always say, before you go to a bone drug, really have a very careful workup to make sure there's not a hidden cause, and do everything possible you can to regain bone health. I just spoke with a client today who was on Fosamax for 14 years, did not pay any, her doctors never told her to go off it. She developed indeed a fracture, a typical female fracture of the leg, a typical Fosamax fracture of the leg, and has had a really tough time healing from that. And what she realized was, geez, we should have looked for the cause of this problem rather than just taking the drug. So that's what I would suggest to this reader. That's too much loss. Pay attention to it. Look for the cause. We've got a couple more minutes. There's another question here about, I take vitamin D 50,000 units a week with no calcium. Or this person actually took 50,000 units a month. So the first thing, that translates into about 1,600 units a day. For some people, 1,600 units would be enough. However, number one, I'd say it's better to take the supplement every day, the vitamin D, than to take one big bolus once a month. Number two, as I always stress, the nice thing about vitamin D is you can test your vitamin D level. And so if you can see, is that 1,600 units a day enough for you? I live in upstate New York. That's generally not enough for most people. I just spoke, however, with a client in Chicago who goes to Florida once in a while in the winter. She was okay on 1,600. So you want to be tested to make sure. Vitamin D is simple because you can be tested, and we know we're looking for, at the Center for Better Bones, we strive for a 50 to 60 Ng level of vitamin D. This person is also taking, she writes to say, I'm taking the vitamin D and no calcium. Is that okay? Well, obviously, we see that most people with a bone health concern do better with a full range of nutrients that support bone. Now, it totally depends. This person may not have a bone health concern at all, and she may be doing just fine with her regular diet. But again, I would say to go back and look at the supplements that we've produced in the Better Bones program. Some of them are very comprehensive. Some of them have all the key nutrients, like 44 nutrients, like the Better Bones Builder. Some have just 7 or 8 nutrients, like the Better Bones Basics. But generally, if there's any kind of bone health concern, we really suggest supporting the bone with the nutrients, the vitamins and minerals, the essential fats, as well as a vitamin D. Great. Now, there is one last question. Let me see if there's anything new about the loss of calcium in the urine. There's one last question from last week about what natural supplements can be taken for menopause. And I'm really happy to say that I work in conjunction with the Women's Health Network, and they have spent a great deal of time developing formulas for menopause. One of their great formulas is Herbal Equilibrium. So you can find information on the Women's Health Network right on the website. That's a great product that many of my clients have gotten relief for menopausal symptoms. Okay, as usual, it's a lot of fun chatting with you. Our mission here at the Center for Better Bones is really to awaken people to their possibility and their responsibility to take charge of their bone health. We know that all excessive bone loss has a cause, and we know that there's always the potential to build better bones and regenerate bone health. So we are happy to offer these little Facebook Live chats. We're going to try to do them Thursdays at 12:30 Eastern Time. I won't do one next week, the second Wednesday, the first Thursday in June, because I'll be out of town, but we'll be doing them afterwards. We'll often talk about the blogs. If you read the blog that comes out earlier in the week, and then you say, gee, I want to ask a question about that, this will be the opportunity. Or if you want to write in another question, just send it on to us. We also encourage you to help us develop the Better Bones community. We want to help resolve, our goal is to resolve this bone health, this osteoporosis crisis, by people taking charge of their own bone health. So you might share information with our blog, get your friends and the people who care about bone health to sign up for the blog. We'd love to have them join us in Facebook. Send us your questions, and we'll do the best to answer them. In the meantime, I wish you all the greatest health and happiness this week. We won't be talking to you next week, but we'll be talking to you the week after that. So be well and thrive. I look forward to talking to you soon. Bye-bye.